this year. I don't know why.
Yeah. Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Content Chat. I'm your host, Erika Heald, and joining me today as a fellow allergy sufferer, enjoying this crazy March weather. As an aside, here in Sacramento, it was in the 90s over the weekend, 90 degrees, March. Okay, weird stuff. But joining me today is Neal Schaffer, and we're going to be talking all about LinkedIn. So, Neal, take a minute to introduce yourself and tell folks a little bit about who you are, what you do, and maybe flash your book.
Sure. Well, my name is, you can see it down there, Neal Schaffer. I am a fractional CMO, author, speaker, consultant, university educator. I launched my business really organically. My background is B2B sales and biz dev in Asia before that. Long story. But I launched my business really taking part in a lot of networking meetings locally, getting really deep in LinkedIn, answering questions that people had about LinkedIn, launching a blog about LinkedIn, which I actually launched on LinkedIn. For those that remember, they used to have these apps and they had a WordPress.com app.
Yep.
And that really launched into a blog, which then became a book, which then led to speaking opportunities. And then in January 2010, the fork in the road, the job offer on one hand, and the ability to already had some consulting opportunities on the other hand. And I decided to launch the digital marketing consultancy back then, and I haven't looked back. So LinkedIn is my first social media love. I've written 6 books, and 3 of them are on LinkedIn. My most recent one is this book called Maximizing LinkedIn for Business Growth, the second edition, which just came out January 1st of this year. And while everybody talks about TikTok and Instagram, I am just doubling down on LinkedIn.
Well, it's amazing because, so many social media platforms and publishing platforms have come and gone since you launched your consultancy. And so LinkedIn has been this constant for us, especially for B2B marketers. Yeah, it kind of gets overlooked because people think, oh, well, it's kind of old hat. We need to jump onto something new, but it still is the best place to meet B2B buyers where they are.
Oh, absolutely. It hasn't changed. Just those that have discovered it have become more numerous. And then those internet marketers who tried their tactics on Instagram and moved to TikTok, and now they moved to LinkedIn. And you're always going to have those people. But yeah, LinkedIn has really just offered more opportunities for businesses to get discovered, and obviously for professionals even more so. So, I like to say where other platforms like, Meta or TikTok, their primary revenue generator are ads. LinkedIn has LinkedIn Sales Navigator. LinkedIn
Yep.
has talent solutions for recruiters. So they don't just rely on ads, meaning they can give a little bit more organic visibility to people's content. And I think we all realize when we compare our impressions and hopefully our clicks compared to other networks that LinkedIn is actually very generous in what we can receive. So yeah, it's for all those reasons, it's still strong and hasn't, if you're in B2B, a content marketer, it is the place to be. And there's others that you can experiment with that you might have temporary success with, but I find those people, there were the Snapchat for B2B and the TikTok for B2B. And yeah, there's opportunities, but I see those people still coming back to LinkedIn for a variety of reasons.
I think one of the big ones is just the fact that on LinkedIn, people expect you to be talking about business. People expect you to be talking about what you're doing. People understand, that the content is going to be beneficial to people in their work lives. So there isn't really the need to pretend that that's not the case. Or to be afraid to, have a book a meeting kind of a call to action, et cetera, because literally this is where people are going to find resources for doing their jobs. So I think that alone is one of the reasons why it's just vastly different than the content you'll see other places.
Yeah, that's a great point, Erica. And if you think about it, we in digital marketing think of, okay, Pinterest is high intent because they're looking to get inspired. They'll click on an image, go to an e-commerce site, purchase. TikTok is like a search engine, but LinkedIn really is a place, as you said, people are looking to improve their professional career or improve their business. It really can be a highly converting platform for those marketers to do it right. So I think we all, once again, it's all in the mind. We need to change our mindset. And once you realize the value that LinkedIn has, you just put a little bit more priority on it instead of, maybe once in a while I'll post, let's get in a habit of posting weekly. Let's get in a habit of engaging with others in our network, of connecting with others, of commenting. It's just those little things that can really help give you markedly improved presence there over the course of a few weeks or months.
I'd love for us to kind of dive in a little bit and talk about some of the things that have really changed on LinkedIn in recent years. And I think one of the big ones that I want to start with is when we're talking about engagement happening and people seeking out other like-minded professionals. That used to happen in LinkedIn groups. But now, even though, I still am a member, whatever that means, of a variety of LinkedIn groups that I never go visit, instead, what I'm seeing is people are following and interacting with people within their industry, just within the regular LinkedIn news feed versus going to a group.
Yeah, you nailed it, Erica. The news feed used to be one of the most boring. Like, why even post? Why bother? Nobody was engaging with the news feed. They would log into LinkedIn and immediately go somewhere else, like to groups or to their network. But that has changed, and it's a combination of devaluing where groups appear. It's really hard to find them now. It's also the fact that a lot of marketers have just spammed groups to the point
Yep.
where they're just very little value, unfortunately, right? And there's also just more people. We have more digital natives that are now millennials, that are now a majority of the workforce, that grew up posting more content.
Yeah.
And then, I would have to say Instagram and TikTok pushed more people to publish things like selfies or vertical videos. So now the feed is actually interesting in a different way than your Facebook feed, your Instagram or TikTok feed. But yes, definitely the engagement, really all you need is your feed. And that should be a clue as to you should never have to be searching for ways to engage with people. If you're connected with the right people and you're following industry influencers, it's right there in your feed.
100%. I mean, you get these notifications. And again, notifications used to be just, okay, somebody followed you, somebody sent you a message, somebody commented on your content. Now your feed tells you what's interesting that you might want to go, chime in on, the same way that if you were at a conference and you kind of were coming into a room for break time, and you see, one of your friends over there talking to somebody and seeming like they're having a really great conversation, you might make a little beeline over there and listen in and join the conversation. Now notifications do that same thing, because they'll tell you somebody that you engage with a lot is talking about a topic you talk about with some other person that you don't know. So it's actually doing some of that matchmaking facilitation in a way that it just never did before.
Yeah, another way it does that, Erica, great point. Another way is, if you think about it, I mean, LinkedIn is being very selective, as every social network copies every other social network, but LinkedIn has been very selective to maintain that professional environment. So for instance, on a Meta platform, you might see a post that's not sponsored, but they assume you like the content, like TikTok style, just based on the algorithm. What LinkedIn does is they might push that content because they want to expand not everybody in your network is posting all the time. So there might be some gaps in the posting. They want to introduce other content like that you might be interested in, but they will always show it that a first degree connection liked that post, or a first degree connection commented on that post, which I think is instead of like, why am I seeing this? They give it that professional context. That also means that, hey, if you publish content and someone in your network likes or comments on it, it increases the chance of virality that's going to go out to second degree connections, which happens obviously with successful posts. So if you think about it, if you reverse engineer, there's a lot of reasons why LinkedIn is such an exciting place for content marketers.
And I'd say another one of the reasons is, what you see happening right now. We're live on LinkedIn as we're recording this. So we have a live audience. And from time to time, folks do ask questions during the recording of this podcast, which is why we do it as a LinkedIn live stream. So you can have that opportunity to ask people in your network questions, those industry experts questions live, which, that's pretty great. It's like having a conference session at your desk while you're either eating lunch or having that coffee break in the afternoon. That is something too that I think is pretty unique for the platform.
Yeah, I mean, you could do a closed webinar where you want to obviously acquire email addresses, or you could do a live stream on LinkedIn to gather engagement, to maybe get new followers, new connections, or you could do both, right? You could actually live stream your webinar to LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And the technology has really caught up. Erika, you use StreamYard. I used to use StreamYard. I use Riverside.fm. There's Restream. I met someone. I'm going to give a shout out to Timothy Hughes, who is also an author of a book on social selling. And he was talking about how at his company for employee advocacy, they use Restream.io, and they'll have their employees restream that presence. So when they do a live stream, it's coming at the LinkedIn audience from 10 different profiles. So they get a lot more coverage and visibility for their live stream content. Just another bit of advice for those content marketers out there that might not have tapped their foot into live stream, but Erika, one of the things I wanted to point out when you were talking about all the ways it's changed is that there are 12 distinct types of content that you can publish on LinkedIn. And I say this because most other platforms, it is very, very limited. I mean, TikTok, yeah, you can do images, you can do like screenshots, but it's mainly video. But LinkedIn, I mean, there was a time when polls were the most viral type of content. You have live stream, you have carousels, which are not photo galleries, but PDFs and all these things. So there's a lot of ways to get your message out there. And I think the algorithm is smart enough to know that people also engage with different content formats differently as well. So there's a lot of A/B testing that the content marketers that are watching or listening should be doing to make sure they measure their success. In my experience, Erika, my live streams did not do as well as other content formats. So I have not been doing them recently on LinkedIn. My vertical form videos don't do as well as some other people. Yep. So everybody's network is going to be different. I had someone say, hey, Neal, my audience are older executives. I think I should be doing horizontal videos, not vertical videos, because I think that's the format they're used to watching. So, don't try to replicate your success on top of someone else's. Your audience is going to be unique. Your content and USP is unique as well. You need to find that perfect combination. The only way you do that is through testing, and the only way you can test is through actual execution.
100%. And I think what's so great, for me, the reason I really still love the live stream platform is LinkedIn will continue to promote the archive, the replay of that live stream to people in your network, in your guest network for like a month. Because as long as it's not something that comes across as being too, tied to a specific moment in time, like, if we were doing a live stream about, the day after the Oscars, maybe that wouldn't get the kind of, replay value. But realistically, for a good solid month, it is teeing up the content when it feels like it would be relevant to somebody. So it's sort of, to me, it's probably because they don't have their own podcast network, but this is a way to kind of keep content like that in front of people in a way. Although now I'm like, I wonder if they're going to come up with a podcast network next, Neal.
Well, they do have, if you do some Google searches, they do have this media network where they're engaging with certain creators to create some videos that that company can advertise on, creating that little network. So we'll see how much they expand that. But I mean, it's a great point that you bring up, Erika. Note to self, try live stream again, because the algorithm is always changing. We never know what they're going to prioritize. But I also find that there's certain content that will continue to get pushed for weeks, because not everyone is not only not publishing content every day on LinkedIn. I don't publish content every day on LinkedIn, and I've written 3 books on the subject, but also a lot of people don't even log in every day. So when they log in, they might not have logged in for a week. LinkedIn will push your content, and that's why you're going to see a lot of visibility for older content for that reason. And we have to remember that it's not a Facebook where everybody logs in every day.
No, that's true. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions is people think, oh, I have to post as much as possible. I have to post every day. I need to post a few times a day. But really what I've seen for the entirety of my time on LinkedIn is that's a great way to cannibalize your audience, because LinkedIn is not Twitter. It is not a place, there are people who have it open all day. If your audience is HR professionals, and I've certainly back in the day when I was in-house, I had that as my, community that I was speaking to. Yeah, they will have LinkedIn open on their desktop and be looking at it all day because they're doing recruiting and other items like that. But everybody else is going to be setting aside that time to go to LinkedIn, or they're going to go to LinkedIn because they got a really juicy push notification or an email newsletter sent to them. But there isn't that kind of feeling that you need to be putting up 3 or 4 unique posts every day.
Yeah, if you're already doing a few a week, that's great. I would say, and myself, I go through periods where I schedule content weeks in advance, and others where I have nothing to post. So, and that's, it's not easy to maintain consistency. If you work at a company, a little bit different, but if for a professional, so I would just say try to stick with one a week. And once you do that for a few weeks, go to two a week. But it's not a network where you need to post daily, or even, I mean, definitely not multiple times a day, or even daily to have success, because it's not just in the feed. It's also the engagement. It's also
Yeah.
expanding your network. It's also direct messages and all the other opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. You need to be out there and engaging with other people, not just talking at them. You want to actually have those conversations with them for for sure.
Yeah, and we've known this, just thinking holistically, we've known this about TikTok, that if you just go in there and post videos without following or using the platform or engaging or priming the platform, as a lot of marketers will say, you just won't get a lot of visibility for your content, no matter how good it is. And LinkedIn, apparently, we talked about this, Erika, recently, with their algorithmic changes, they're also looking at that. They don't want people to just post content. They want to see that you engage. And this is the reason why you see a lot of that spam comments coming from second, third degree connections that you've never heard of. But it's also the reason that if you haven't been engaging enough, it really is in your best interest, not just for the algorithm, but obviously for content marketing, for networking, for business in general.
Yeah.
But it is becoming more important. I think it's a smart move. I mean, you should be spending time on there authentically anyway.
Well, this your book is in its second edition, so that says to me that you've definitely taken a look at what had been working, and you've come up with some new strategies and had gained some insights from between publishing the first edition and this one. So I was hoping you could give me just sort of an overview of what's new and kind of the overall premise of the book, because I think we all want to do a better job on LinkedIn if we're listening to this or watching this live stream right now.
Yeah, it's more of a general. It's for the professionals, obviously marketers, entrepreneurs, or professionals that really want to improve their personal branding and make the most out of the platform, of giving them all the options and the best practices. So it's really how I launched my career back in 2009, because that book did not exist. And I wrote my second LinkedIn book back in 2011. I always had, because we're all content marketers listening, I had a lead magnet that was a free LinkedIn ebook. And every year I would revise it, and it went from 10 pages to 20 pages, and then it went to like 50 pages. It's like, you know what? I could probably convert this into a bona fide ebook and put it up on Kindle as a book.
Yeah.
So that is exactly what I did. I obviously I filled in the gaps, and that became the first edition, which was published back on September 17, 2024. Now, what's changed since then, and what I added to the book, obviously AI, because back in 2024, we were still looking at these various AI apps before realizing, wow, we can do all this inside of a ChatGPT or a Gemini or a Claude, right? So that was, and we can go beyond, we can get really, really sophisticated with how we use it. So obviously a whole chapter on AI was completely rewritten, re-added. I also redid the content formats, because that also changed. I talk about these 12 different formats, and the things that LinkedIn seemed to be prioritizing in 15 months had already changed. So just to give equal weight to things, and to give my latest feedback, to give you a feel, I have actually found that newsletters, when we look at impressions, I definitely get the most visibility when I publish newsletters. Now I have 50,000 followers. I have maybe 8,000 newsletter subscribers, and I don't publish every week, maybe every other week or every 3 weeks. But I definitely, when I do publish, that is the format that's working for me. And interestingly enough, the other day I was searching for something on Google, and I found it was the second page, but it was actually a LinkedIn company newsletter. So it was a newsletter published by a LinkedIn company page. And then when I went to the company, I realized it was just the exact same blog post that they published on their own website. But what we're finding, if you've been watching these data studies about how large language models source content, we're finding that there's a lot of content coming from LinkedIn long form content, i.e. LinkedIn newsletters, right? So that is another sort of, it's not part of the book. We've only found these studies like in the last 3 to 6 months, but we're definitely finding an additional advantage to being on LinkedIn, is that there are an increasing number of LinkedIn citations, and those are in large language models, and those are primarily coming from newsletters, not from standard posts. So that's another thing to look at. I also created a new chapter on pay to play, or use it for free. I have always been a proponent of use everything you can for free as much as you can. But it was really after I published that last book that someone said, "Hey, Neal, did you know that like I can't personalize my invite?" And I'm like, "What?" And I realized that LinkedIn put this new restriction in 2024 that a lot of people don't realize, that you can only send 5 personalized invites per month.
Yeah.
So if you're doing networking and you want to expand your network and you meet people at conferences, and you just want to put a sentence in there, say, "Hey, great meeting you at the conference," you can only do that for 5 people. That alone is a reason to pay to play,
Yeah.
to actually upgrade to the pay, which I did, which I continue to do. There's other advantages, but that alone, if you're going to be networking and expanding your network, that alone, I believe, is worth the price of admission. So I go in deep on that chapter. I also created a chapter on case studies of people that have actually implemented similar advice to what I give and the results that they've seen. And it's not like dramatic, that one, vertical video went viral. It's about, the personal branding. It's about the consistency and content production. It's on brand. It's about engaging with others. The agency that generated a few $1 million in sales without a sales team, just by, a few employees being active on LinkedIn and offering advice. So that's the sort of thing that excites me about LinkedIn that I think is possible for all of you. I'd say those are the main areas that were updated. Content format types, AI, pay to play, and case studies. One last thing that I did add now that I think of it. So it went from a 15,000 word book to a 30,000 word book. So
Oh,
now I
wow.
actually have a paperback, a hardcover, and I'm about to start recording an AI audiobook, my first digitally narrated audio, which I can't wait for. But the other thing I added, it's something that I realized is, and this is maybe my sales background, but the LinkedIn inbox is not cool, right? Like if you get flooded with like happy 3rd anniversary or whatever, you get flooded with like 20 messages, and some important messages just get lost,
Yeah.
right? And so I found, as I went back, and maybe I was, I wanted to do a business trip to somewhere. So I'd go back and look at my connections in that area. And I realized, oh my gosh, there was a speaking opportunity, and I completely did not respond to that. So I
Yeah.
realized that there needs to be a better way to control the LinkedIn inbox. And I found one tool. I talk about it in the book as well. We'll share it here. It's a cool tool called Condo. I do have an affiliate link, but it's nealschaffer.com/Condo, Kondo, or you can just do a search for Condo. But I do find it is the best app, because what it is a skin that basically that you can feed your LinkedIn inbox into. And when you archive something there, you can actually tag conversations. So I can tag people, and then I can actually do like a boomerang for Gmail. I can actually say, "Hey, I want to follow up with this person in 30 days. It'll actually put that to the top of my inbox.
Oh, that's
I have saved
awesome.
responses. Yeah, a few little things there. So for instance, one thing that I do is when someone subscribes to my newsletter, I will send them a connection request, and I'll say, "Hey, thanks for subscribing to my newsletter. Would you be interested in a review copy of my new book?" And then what I can do is I can tag them saying that, I sent them when they accept, right? Because the message appears, I tag them as coming from my newsletter. And then if they say, "Yes, I'd love to," then I tag them as a book review prospect. And then I put a reminder to follow up in 30 days. "Hey, hope you enjoyed the book. What do you think? Would love a review," et cetera, et cetera. So that's an example of a book as a product. I'm sure the content marketers with free trials and lead magnets, there's a lot of things you can do. The only tool I've found that does this is Condo. There are CRMs you can use, but I highly recommend you check it out. The guy, the founder, he's in LA, he's from Singapore, real down to earth. He does a lot of one-on-one demos with new users. So definitely let him know that Neal sent you if you were going to try that out. But that has helped me keep some sanity. But above and beyond that, Erika, I find that it is the follow-up. It's not just the fact that the emails get lost. It's that concept of following up with people, of keeping in touch with people.
Yep.
If you're a sales professional, that is like the blood, the lifeline of your business. And so really it's about the follow-up and about developing a personal CRM, not a Salesforce unless you have access to it, but something that any professional can use to make sure that they are better following up with people. So there's a few cool tools I talk about. There's something called Clay, CLAY, that's out there. There's another one called Relatable that I'm currently experimenting with. There's some other CRMs that are very social media friendly, like Nimble. But at some point, if you really want to value your network and your connections, if you're a content marketer, engaging with lots of different people, and if your company gives you a CRM, it's one thing. But if you're a professional, a solopreneur, what have you, without a CRM, I think it's time to invest in a personal CRM. So I created a new chapter, Erika, getting back to your question.
Yeah.
I think the very, very final chapter was the follow-up. and talking about, Condo as a tool, as well as just these processes you can put in place and the technology that will help you become better at following up with people and not missing out on the opportunities, because your next opportunity just might already be in your LinkedIn inbox. That is a quote from the book.
And it's so true. I mean, I
Right.
think we've all had that experience, because I know if I'm speaking at an event, I'll get all sorts of requests that I accept from people who are in the audience, or who weren't in the audience and want to chat with me. But on a day-to-day basis, I get a lot of spammy invites from, their business development, or they're just bots or what have you. And that can fill my notifications in my inbox, and I will completely miss a message that I would want to respond to.
Yep.
Um, and even with using a tool like Agora Pulse, where I'm getting, inbox stuff in there, because the thing is you don't see every inbox email that you get. You see ones that are sent to you directly outside of an invitation.
Yep. And that was my issue with social media scheduling tools. And I currently used Agora Pulse. Great tool,
Mhm.
great company, great people, right?
Yep.
And what I found was, like, this goes beyond LinkedIn, like on Twitter, it wasn't showing threads. And I realized there was all these notifications and functionality that I couldn't access because I was just relying on the notifications in the social media dashboard, which is why I know I only use social media dashboards for scheduling content, but I
Yep.
go straight to each social media platform. Not that efficient, but it's what you got to do. And LinkedIn was the first network where it's like, I'm not even going to schedule content outside. I'm going to schedule it inside of LinkedIn because that's the most valuable network.
Yep. No, it totally makes sense to me. So I know you said that there are 12 different content types that are available
Uh-oh.
to folks
Uh-oh.
on
You're going to test
LinkedIn.
me, huh?
I'm like,
Let's see
oh
if
my
I remember.
gosh, 12. Well, I'm not going to ask you to go through all of them, but I would love your thoughts on, which of those types really seem to be great at generating engagement, like from your experience and what you've seen with clients.
There are some that do really well with videos. I have not found videos to be performing well on LinkedIn for me yet. I think that the highest performers are going to be newsletters, are going to be single images,
Yep.
multiple images, or the PDF, which LinkedIn calls the carousel. Images can be infographic type images. They could also be selfies. I think, galleries are really powerful because they display a few different images and people like to click through. Those to me are like the bread and butter. Like every week, if you could be publishing one newsletter around your company or industry, and I often will repurpose my podcast episodes to become my newsletter, and that's the way I share them. And the other one would be an image post of some sort, whether it is an infographic, a selfie, or multiple photo gallery. You'll notice, and this is what surprises people, Erika, I publish 4 blog posts a week. I do not share them on LinkedIn. LinkedIn does not like people sharing links. And
Yep.
I know the first link in the comment, I would rather repurpose it and create a new infographic and talk about the concept from the blog post
Yep.
with the LinkedIn audience. And maybe I'll put a link, the first, comment link. But I am not looking at social media as a place for traffic generation because it just does not work. And I talk about it in the book, and I've been talking about it for a decade. I'm sure you've seen it as well, Erika. But that engagement, what I did do though, is because of the way that SEO and large language models and everything works, I've replaced my URL, my main URL. I've replaced that with a lead magnet.
Yep.
So there are things you can do to try to generate those leads. Obviously, featuring them in your featured, pun intended, posts and what have you. But just the link dropping posts, I think those days are long gone. You got to be a little bit more creative, because if you're not going to get engagement, it hurts every other. You have this batting average in baseball terms, and it just hurts that batting average. You want to maintain that Ichiro like status. So that's my advice there. If you're still like dropping links, of how do we make this more visual? And the great thing is with AI, it's never been easier than ever before to, hey, give me some visual ideas from this post that will engage people on LinkedIn, that this is my target audience, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be my advice for those content marketers that are struggling. That's going to get you more engagement, might get you a few link clicks, but I would focus more on generating traffic from large language models on LinkedIn, in all honesty,
Yeah.
today.
It 100% makes sense, because really, if you want to share, especially if you're talking about third-party content, like if I wanted to share an HBR article that I found to be really interesting, Yeah, I might put the link in my newsletter because I have a section in the newsletter where it's like stuff I've read and things I think about them. But if I wanted to share that on LinkedIn because I got really excited about it, I would go to their company page, find where they shared it, and I would reshare it with my thoughts. And I would probably, write 500, 600 words about why I cared about that post versus ever trying to just drop a link.
Amen. And I have done that. Like I'll have people, tag me and I'll reshare. I often found that those reshares do really bad. Like the reshare looks good because you're taking on the numbers of the original post, but
Yeah.
actually if you look at your analytics, it really didn't offer that much visibility to the content. So there's different ways of looking at it. Obviously, by sharing it, giving your own perspective, it's not only about the engagement; it's also about your personal brand.
Yeah.
And for those people that come to your profile that see, oh, she's reading Harvard Business Review, that's on a different level than someone that's just sharing content from, social media today. Nothing wrong with social media today, but it's obviously at a different level. It might
Yeah.
appeal to different people differently, right?
And it gives that context so that way people understand at a glance, where you're coming from, which I think is something that isn't always clear because we do have um, so many people who look like they've used the LinkedIn content generator, the internet meme site, in order to hype up what they were doing. I know one of my contacts today had posted about how after running one of her daily accomplishments through that, it noted that in addition that she was a what was it, a professional bird model, was something that it came up with after looking at what her like vacation photos or something. And it's just so funny because there is so much fluff. There's a lot of the self-aggrandizement when it's not necessary. Nobody, people see through it when you're overdoing it. But it's funny because I do think people get so excited about chasing the algorithm and trying to copy something that they saw working for someone else that
Yeah.
they can get away from being authentically who they are and sharing what they know about specifically just to have some broetry or jump on some meme creation.
Yeah, I want to share this with you. It might be shocking to some people as it was to me, but there are several of these LinkedIn AI tools, and a lot of LinkedIn quote unquote influencers are using them, which gives them consistent content creation it basically reverse engineers what are the most viral content out there. And then it tries to replicate that style, that format. And I think we've all seen them. And I'll never forget talking to the founder of one of these tools, and it just completely, generated a few weeks worth of content for me without knowing me, right? Because it bases the content on the topic.
Yeah.
And then it would say things like, I have experiences that I've never told the AI had experiences about. I'm like, are people publishing this as is? And the founder said, we found that about half of the people are publishing the content as is. And so it's really, really scary. I would never recommend you do that. And I know these AI tools are saying, oh, but now you can inject your brand voice. But the best way to do it is just to do it on your own, right?
Yes.
Without a doubt, you can look at patterns, textual patterns that you see that you think really might resonate with your audience, that resonate with you, and take screenshots and upload those to your own, create your own brain, your digital brain within whatever large language model you use. There's nothing wrong with being inspired by those because we all are as marketers. We're constantly being inspired by everything around us, but you don't need a tool to tell you what to do, right? And tell you what experience you have when you never had it. So I'll stop there. I'm
No,
sure,
I mean,
Erika, you
it's
have
just so
stories to tell as
important.
well.
It's so important, Neal. You've got to start with your own experiences because that's what's valuable, and that's what the AI doesn't have. It doesn't have life experiences and work experiences. Its experience is working with you in that moment. That's its life
Yep.
experience.
The
So if you're
first
starting with it telling you what to share with humans, you really need to take a step back.
I read a lot of nonfiction books or business books, and and I'll look at samples on Amazon, and the first the first instance where this is AI generated, where it starts with Mary was tired of her job. So it always starts with these analogies of people that never existed. There's no company names, there's no links, and there's no personal stories. There's not in my experience, or let me tell you about one of my customers with a customer name and a person and a title. There's no specificity. There's none of that. So don't become that person using AI. And there are savvy ways. I go into, in more detail in Maximizing LinkedIn for Business Growth of how you can use AI to help you generate that content based on your own unique experiences, your own unique voice, your natural voice. And that's always going to perform way better than anything that comes out of a tool, in my opinion.
It's so much better, like, especially if you're talking about building thought leadership, which is something I know you and I both work with a number of clients who are either founders or executives who want to become known around a specific topic and to gain, speaking engagements, etc. It's so much better to start from a story that you want to share, an experience you want to share, and have that personal element. And then you can use AI to polish or to structure it in a different way, or to think about what you're forgetting or what you're
Yes.
assuming that the audience knows.
I was going to say it, we forget. AI doesn't forget. So, I'm working on a book that's going to be AI related, Erika, and that there's an overlap with what you talk about, which I want to write about, which is that use it as a library of all of your stories. And whenever you think of a story, put it in there. That is going to pay dividends going forward for any piece of content you create. When I was in the business world, well, when I was in sales, I should say, not the business world, I'm still in the business world, but when I was in sales, I always found that when I would work for a startup for 8 or 9 years, startup out of Ottawa, Canada, I was VP of Asia sales based in Osaka, Japan. And when our CEO and founder came out to clients, first of all, by bringing the CEO to clients, I was able to meet someone higher up at the client. But he had all these stories that he would tell the clients or the potential clients that always help convert that conversation into business. And I'm thinking, all these founders have all these stories, but they never get out there unless you meet them in person and they remember to bring it up. Don't become that, right? With AI, use it, or just a Google Doc, anything, but start to build a database of speakers. Have been doing this for a long time. I, as a speaker, will often build a database of stories that I can refer to when I'm looking for anecdotes to talk about during different speeches. This is the number one thing. If you take anything away from today's conversation on Content Chat with Erika Heald, it's this, is build a database of stories in AI for your future.
Plagiarize from yourself. It's so helpful. I started when I wrote my book, Content Foundations.
You mentioned that, yeah.
I started with the recordings from the 2-hour workshops, the 1-hour sessions. I put all of that into my large language model and said, here's my outline of what I'm thinking about. What have I forgotten? What did I talk about here that isn't reflected in my outline? And it told me. And it added 2 chapters that I hadn't thought about. And I'm like, well, duh, of course I should have these things there. So it kept me honest, and it reminded me of things I've forgotten. And it does that for me all the time, because I have one that, I always use it for reviewing my content. And I'm like, tell me what I should have put in here that I've talked about, or that I've written about. Tell me what I should be including here. And it does. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That makes sense. I love it. It acts, as your third brain without you having to create a spreadsheet, which is how I used to have to create that same kind of, remember all the things that I'm not going to be able to remember so that way I can use them. I just think it's magical. And it's so much more, it's more ethical and authentic than so many of the other AI use cases.
Absolutely.
Now, you were talking about how, our founders, our CEOs, those high-level people with very little time, and certainly who feel like they have no time for content creation, when you get them one-on-one in front of your audience, they're able to convert sales like crazy. So for me, what I have found when I've been working with founders is I will get them to do things. Like, I had one startup founder he was amazing for this. He had an 1.5-hour commute into the office. So on days when he was driving into the office, he would call in to my voicemail and leave me a long, rambling voicemail message. And he would do that every time. Anytime he had an idea or a story he wanted to share, he would call me, or he would record a voice memo and send it to me. And I would plug that into Otter and get a transcript from it. So I'm even able to query Otter when I would be wanting to write something for him, I would query Otter and say, hey, can you find me that anecdote about whatever it was? And I'd be able to just go pull it and start crafting something around it. And that to me is one of the really powerful things that we as marketers can do, is we can, take that raw material in whatever format they're able to give it to us, put it into a format that the AI can access, and then go back to it later, query it. But we can do the same thing by making sure that we see the comments that they're making on social, on LinkedIn, that are getting that engagement, those things that were just kind of a one-off that all of a sudden explodes with people being yes and. Those are the kinds of things that you can start screenshotting them. You don't even have to, copy paste. You can just screenshot it. And again, throw it into your LLM, and it learns from that. It learns what content is actually going to resonate with your specific audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, I go one step further. I know that Otter has a lot of AI functionality, but I'll copy and paste that, create a project in Claude, and then you could just create if you're a consultant, just create a project for that consultant, for that client, and then everything related to that client. You could do this with Adobe Acrobat Spaces. There's a few different ways of doing it, but yeah, it's Erika, a few years from now, we're going to be like, duh, because that's just work in life is just going to be AI enabled, as I think we're beginning to experience it. So for those that haven't, hopefully this conversation and hopefully my book and Erika's book as well will help accelerate that process for you.
I love it. And again, for me, it's not replacing anything that I would have purchased from anybody. It's not replacing me generating content myself. It is just enabling me to, grab onto those fleeting ideas and things that you can push out of your brain with all the other stuff you have to remember, and helping me do more with the time that I have. So I love it.
Yeah. I will quote one of my favorite podcasters and authors. She's big in the self-publishing space. Her name is Joanna Penn out of the UK. When I saw her speak, she said AI should be amplify intelligence. And that's exactly what you said, Erika, what I try to do as well. Amplify all those good things about your ideas and get them out to the world.
Well, I think that we've given folks a lot of great ideas for, what they should be doing. But I always think it's important to talk about some of the things that we shouldn't be doing. Those mistakes that we keep seeing people engage in on LinkedIn. And I'm going to start with my least favorite thing that I see the most frequently. And that is when you have an executive who's created a piece of thought leadership. So like they've had, done a presentation, or they've had a really great interview that became an article in a leading industry publication, whatever it is. And it's posted, usually posted for them. Somebody scheduled it and posted it, or it's posted on the company page. And then that person whose name is on that byline, or who was the subject of the interview, doesn't share it. They don't comment on it. They don't reshare it. It's like it never happened. Oh my goodness. When you talk about wasted opportunities, because when that happens, then everyone's like, oh, well, the CEO didn't respond to this or share it. So I bet they didn't even write it or participate in it, or it's not really that good. Or if it was good, they would share it. And I say that because I contrast it with when I was, I have one specific client who I remember I wrote a piece for VentureBeat. And I sat down and I interviewed this client for like an hour to really just pull out all of those stories and the point. And then I wrote this amazing article. When he shared it on social, he didn't say, here's what my ghostwriter, put together for me. Here's, whatever. Instead, he said, I am so excited about the article I wrote for VentureBeat, because he did write it. I was the editor and the interviewer and the person who drew all of it out, structured it, but it was his story. I just helped him tell his story. And he was so excited about it. He shared it. And that post did amazing for him. Absolutely amazing. The post did really great for VentureBeat too, because it had all of these founders and, C-level executives engaging with that content. It was such a huge win. But then you contrast it with equally great piece, the CEO just doesn't bother to share it. And you're like, oh my God, why did we spend any of our time and money with that content?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Eric. And I think, I don't include it in this book. I think I've included it in some of my presentations. But when you think about, let's put an influencer lens on LinkedIn users, who are the most influential? They're the ones at the top of the totem pole, the CEOs, the founders, the executives. And those are the people that often are the least social, right?
Yeah.
So yes, you need to have a robust profile, but every now and then you should go in and engage, especially if it's about you or your company, because that, it's not just the fact that you're engaging and other people see that, your employees see that as well. And they're like, well, if our CEO is doing it, we got to do it as well. It creates, I believe, a very, very positive company culture. So that is very true. If you want to have an assistant do it, or you hire someone like Eric or myself, whatever, you really need to have that coverage. And it doesn't need to be that often either. Just a once a week check-in would be enough to catch that, make a comment, to share it.
Totally. Although that reminds me of something else, which is funny, because I've worked with people on the two opposite, equally wrong-headed parts of a spectrum, which is around who should be sharing company page content. And I know you and I have a similar perspective, which is company page content has its place, but it's not usually going to do as well as that personal content. So that's why, when you're working with the leader who says every person in the company needs to share every company post to their LinkedIn network, or they can go find a new job somewhere else. And I'm only lightly paraphrasing the person who I'm talking about here. That is so terrible, because your company page content being engaged with people that are not your target audience will not help you at all. That's just getting reach, but it's not reaching the right people. And so then it confuses the algorithm, who then doesn't understand who is interested in your content. But on the opposite end of that, you can end up in that situation where your target audience is, let's say, head of IT, head of HR, yet the person in your company who has that role is not sharing any of the thought leadership you're sharing that is supposed to be targeted to that audience. That means that they're training the algorithm that your content is of 0% interest to them and anybody like them in their network. So it's the same problem, but it's the opposite ends of that spectrum, but they're both equally bad. Neither one of those things is going to help you at all.
Yeah, Erika, the point I like to make about that is it comes down to the content itself. So I actually did a study. I presented on this at Content Marketing World. I want to say 2022, 2023. You can find a video on YouTube, a summary, but I actually did a study. A enterprise software company commissioned me to do a study of what content was resonating from LinkedIn company pages. And I think the thing that resonates then still resonates now, which is the most resonating type of content was content that had people's faces in them.
Yep.
Right. So just having that, and it's not even a matter of tagging people, but obviously when you talk about employees, or when you talk about a CEO that's loved by the company because they're very charismatic, what have you, those types of things will be content that your employees will want to naturally share. Make content. If you want to get more of your employees engaged on LinkedIn, make content that they would actually share. Look at your analytics. Bring in some of the people that are already sharing content, right? Get their ideas. Employee advocacy programs, or employee influencer programs, or employee engagement programs, whatever you want to call it, they need to be as inclusive as possible, bringing in multiple perspectives, diverse perspectives, and getting advice on what they would like. So I think that's the number one problem I see. You can publish a press release every week, but no one's going to want to share that stuff on LinkedIn, right?
No, and no one's going to read it if they do share it.
That
so
too,
it just ends up being, instead of the rising tide that, the tide that raises all boats, instead it's, you're sinking everybody in with the algorithm. And no one wants that.
True.
What are, from your perspective, in the last 10 minutes or so that we have here, what are some easier things that people can do today to kind of take stock of what they're doing on LinkedIn and just come out with a better strategy for, the second quarter?
So I'm a big fan of, in digital marketing, when we think about SEO, we think about keyword intent, We look at what's out there, what's working. If we were going to analyze our own email, we'd look at the analytics of what's worked, what hasn't, and why. And same with social media analytics. I think with LinkedIn, if you are not confident in what you're doing is working, it really is taking a step back and looking at the market, looking at other people out there, starting with a search for how you want to be found. Look at the people that are found. Had this conversation today in my mastermind. Someone is a digital accessibility consultant, but on their LinkedIn headline, they had online accessibility. And lo and behold, I did a search for online accessibility on LinkedIn. All the results were digital. Well, there were no results for online accessibility. There were a number for digital accessibility, right?
Yep.
So little things like that can give you some clues as to not just your professional headline, but who's coming up. Look at a lot of profiles, just like you want to consume a lot of content. Look at a lot of profiles. Look at that headline image. Look at that professional headline. Look at the summary. Look at the featured. Those are the 4 key things. That's how you're going to get found. And when people find you, the content they're going to consume first on your profile, that is absolutely where you want to start, and make sure that you're properly aligned. And guess what? It's easier than ever to redo those things with the power of AI, including image creation for that cover image that's at the top of your profile. So I'm hoping, because if you're listening to Erika's content chat or you're watching this live stream, you're actually pretty savvy. But so I assume you already have a cover image, but if you don't, that's the number one thing you can do right now and I assume you already have a featured section, but if not, those are the 2 things you can do. Go to your headline, go to your about section. And then I think it comes to the content strategy, right? You can actually, the LinkedIn search engine has gotten better. I don't know, raise your hand if you remember LinkedIn Signal. LinkedIn actually had they had a little social listening tool that was built in that was free. That was a brilliant tool that allowed you to find conversations in any topic on LinkedIn. Then they removed it. But I don't know if you've noticed, in LinkedIn searches now, you can actually filter for posts. So whatever, keywords are important to your company, do a keyword search for posts for that keyword. Look at the content that's getting a lot of engagement. And once again, use that as a guide to help you craft your own content, and then come up with your engagement plan, right? Every day, be commenting, be liking, be engaging, adding to your network. I call this, and I talk about it in the book, but it is a playbook that you create that says, okay, every day, Monday through Friday, I'm going to log in and I am going to engage with X number of people, or like posts or comment posts, or add connections, follow up with people. It's little things like that if you consistently continue doing that reap the big results. But for the content, start with once a week. You want to be able to maintain consistency, remembering that there are 12 types of content formats that you can use. Start to do some A/B testing. Look at what's working in your feed, which is often a really, really great reminder of the content that the algorithm is pushing is what appears in front of you. And just take all that data and slowly, a lot of YouTubers will say, hey, I just want to create a video today that was better than my previous video. Use that same approach, right? With your content on LinkedIn, just create something that was better, that gets more visibility and engagement than your last piece of content. In a nutshell, I know that was, you'll have to listen to that again at like 0.75 speed, but in a nutshell, right? It's the profile optimization, it's the content optimization, it's the engagement, the follow-up, and putting this all in a playbook, right? That you follow on a day-to-day basis or on a weekly basis if you don't have a lot of time.
Well, I'm going to put you on the hot seat because I do want to ask one follow-up question related to something you just shared. I'm still seeing there's like 2 different formats that you're seeing for the way people are tackling their professional headline. There's the way that a lot of folks that we know are doing it, which is,
I help.
Consultant, author, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then there's the, I'm an experienced librarian who has enthusiasm for blah, 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 and it's a whole paragraph. And I look at that and I just think, oh my Lord, because on the flip side, I do tell people, make sure you have a headline. You don't want it just to pick up whatever your latest job title is at the company you work for, because you don't want your whole identity to be tied to a job that you have no control over. That's silly. Amen. But does that work? Does it work to have a one paragraph title like that?
So I think that when people do that, so there's 2 different things going on, or I said 2 places where your LinkedIn profile will often be seen. Well, 3 different places. So number 1 is in the search results.
Yeah.
So the idea, I think that those people, maybe not the librarian, but the ones that I see that are like that, they're blatant sales pitches. And so they assume that if you look at that headline and you go to their profile, that you're interested in doing business with them. Or if they, if you connect with them, they'll send you that direct message that goes, oh, they connected with me and I had this in my headline. They must want to do business with me. So I absolutely abhor those headlines that look like sales pitches.
Yeah.
So the headline should be about branding. It should be about your expertise and authority. It should be SEO optimized to some extent, like that digital accessibility versus online accessibility, those keywords that you want to be found for. But, part of branding is also differentiation. So I will often add, something in Japanese or fluent in Japanese, or for a while I had like marketing is fun. Whatever it is, you got to differentiate yourself. You also, I do believe you need to make it clear how your business helps people or how you help people, but don't make it look like a sales pitch. And this is where, it's a section in my book where I talk about, this is where AI can give you 10 different variations, right?
Yep.
And once again, as you go through those profiles of people in your industry that appear for your keyword, what are the headlines that you see that you like, right?
Yeah.
And take screenshots, add them into AI and say, hey, I really like the way these work. Can you help revise what I currently have with some ideas stemming from what I see here? If you were going to redesign your website designer would say, hey, tell me some websites that you like the design of. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So do that. And I think you're going to get a much better headline. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Erika.
It totally does. And I think that's great advice for folks. Because honestly, sometimes I think people write those kinds of long rambling titles because they're not sure how to represent themselves. But you can take that long rambly run-on sentence and you can put it in AI and it will give you some ideas. And I think that it'll end up then working a lot better for you and aligning with whatever your objectives are for being on LinkedIn than having something that's going to be too long and cut off in any kind of search results. So
agree 1,000%.
So Neal, we're at the end of our time today. Where can folks find more from you?
Well, I am the real Neal Schaffer. There's obviously a few Schaffers out there in social media as well. So I am Neal Schaffer everywhere on social media. My website, nealschaffer.com, NEALSCHAFFER. Those listening to a podcast. I also have a podcast called Your Digital Marketing Coach. And this is my latest book, Maximizing LinkedIn for Business Growth, which you can find on Amazon, together with the book I published before that, Digital Threads, which is a modern digital marketing playbook. So wherever you buy books, listen to podcasts, or browse on the web or browse on social, hopefully you can find me there that way.
Positively love it. And I'll put in a plug. You can find the archive from Neal's conversation with me about digital threads on erikaheald.com, because we do have, we spent some time with him digging in with his last book as well. So Neal, thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope that I'll be seeing you at a conference later this year.
Thank you, Erika. I hope so as well.
And everybody else, we'll see you back here next week for the next edition of Content Chat. Bye, everyone.